All right, we are back. Nick Vora, Union County Emergency Manager. You're here with us
Good
on a
morning,
regular
Bray.
basis. Yeah, we really appreciate that. So, and your guest and our guest, Anna, and Anna is the local Firewise coordinator. You do a lot of different things, but that's one of the things that you are responsible for.
Yes.
And so we'll get into that here in just a minute. But Nick, let's catch us up on Union County emergency stuff that you deal with.
So I have really good news for the two of you this morning. We don't have a lot of local emergencies to debrief, so that's been a really good thing. We had the usual winter weather that we expect every year that resulted in drifting on some roads. Our road department did an awesome job keeping those open to the extent they can. When you have 40 to 60 mile an hour winds and snow, it's almost impossible to keep up, have enough snow plows to keep up with that type of thing. Fortunately, that weather appears to be behind us now. And now as we look forward to the summer and spring, we'll be looking at our growing season. Hopefully the snow that we have doesn't melt off too fast, and we have nice recharge of our groundwater and some water supply that trickles through the spring for irrigation.
Cool. And so even though we've not gotten much snow in the valley, in the higher elevations, things are normal?
So relatively speaking, we a few weeks ago, or maybe months ago, were looking really good as far as snowpack and went well above average for a brief period of time. But now we've come back closer to around average snowpack.
Okay.
Average is better than less.
Yes, it's better than being in a drought situation. And if you look at some areas like the southwestern United States right now, they're in really desperate situations in some places as far as drought goes. And in Union County, the type of vegetation and terrain that we have, usually our fire seasons are dictated by the prior year's growing season, and that's not the sole factor, but that's a significant factor. So we could have a year this year if it's really dry maybe, but last year was not a good growing season. If that had been the case, then we might not have a lot of fine fuels to carry fires. Or if we have a lot of spring moisture that creates a lot of fuel, and then that dries out in the fall, then that could contribute to a fall fire season. So our snowpack right now isn't necessarily as significant an influence on what our fire season might look like as our weather during May and June that accumulates the fine fuels.
So, I mean, that's interesting. I've not thought about it. So let's say if we had a kind of a bumper year in growth last year, then a dry year this year, then that's when it really loads up.
That could be a pretty significant convergence of factors.
Okay.
And then if you add some significant weather events on top of that, then you can really see a lot of problems.
Okay, interesting.
So over the winter, like, you obviously you have the yahoos that go up in the mountains and, like in like a two-wheel drive, get stuck. Like, was this year an average year for calls for that? More than normal?
I'd say it was fairly average, where we've gotten a few calls, more than a few calls, to be honest.
Every year, though.
Of people who have gone up and gotten stuck in the snow. And I'd say it's probably about 2/3 people recreating and about 1/3 people following directions or a GPS and not observing the conditions that they're encountering and taking that into consideration.
Yeah, you can die from that. There's a family that got stuck like down in California or something.
It was in Southwest Oregon, the Kim family, and that search resulted in an entire new chapter of Oregon statute being written regarding search and rescue.
Wow, huh? That's always interesting to me. Like I always wonder, like, and maybe you do know the number. Like, what's the percentage of people that are negligent that get lost?
I don't know a percentage. Oregon law prohibits us from charging people for search and rescue,
Right.
because we don't want to discourage people from calling for help. But it does say that if someone is negligent to a fairly gross standard, that then we actually can charge them up to a limit.
Have you ever had to?
In my tenure here in Union County, so the last 12 years on search and rescue, we've only done it once, and there was because there was also a criminal act involved that resulted in them needing to be rescued.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
All right. Well, cool. Well, that's good news. So why don't you introduce us to Anna and kind of tell us why she's here with us today.
So Anna is our Union County Firewise coordinator. She works for the Union County Soil and Water Conservation District. I'll let her introduce herself to you as well. But I thought that she would be a really great guest to have on the show to explain what the actions that she is doing to help Union County landowners prepare themselves, their neighbors, and their communities to be more resistant to wildfire when it inevitably comes. And I think that a lot of people in rural areas think that wildfire is something that happens other places. And like, oh yeah, boy, it was a really bad fire season in Grant County last summer. Well, it could be Union County this summer. And we've been really lucky that we haven't had that convergence of field conditions and weather, and that's resulted in large fires. But it's something that's natural, and it's happened before, and at some point in the future that we don't know will likely happen again. And actions that people like Anna take with landowners, as well as the Forest Service, Oregon Department of Forestry, and all of our other really awesome local partners all work together to try and prepare us for that.
Wow. Well, hey, I'm glad you're here with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell me what Firewise is and then how that applies to us locally.
Well, so Firewise, I like to say it's a national program that implements local solutions. So Firewise has been around since 2002 officially, and it was started by the National Fire Protection Association, which is a national organization, as the name implies, with support from the Department of Interior, Forest Service, and then, as Nick mentioned, all of our local state forestry folks. So here in Oregon, that's Oregon Department of Forestry. And it's a program that basically gives communities a template for working together and thinking about what's going to be the most beneficial and cost-effective ways that they can basically support their own wildfire resilience. So a Firewise community, up at Morgan Lake is going to look different than North Powder, is going to look different than what they're doing in Baker County or Wallowa County. So it's really just providing that template for communities to think about what does wildfire preparedness, wildfire resilience look like in our communities? And there's some basic principles that go along with that, and we can talk about that. But yeah, my job is just to help communities think through that process. And then once they go through the steps of being Firewise, there's things that go with it, like doing an assessment, creating an action plan, then actually doing those action plans. You can submit that to the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, and become an officially recognized Firewise community.
Okay. So kind of like being a neighborhood watch community.
Yes.
So
That's an excellent,
Yeah.
excellent
right.
comparison.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay. And so then, and I watched a video last night about this, and I mean, and we've talked many times, and it just kind of makes sense to, if your place happens to be in an area where there's timber around or brush or whatever that might be. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to walk out through in the middle of August and go, wow, this is just an accident waiting to happen. Mm-hmm. And so, what are some of the things that, and I guess I was surprised of how easy and common sense it was, but why don't you give us just a little bit of a course, if you could, on, how would I prepare my home? What are the things that I would look for?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that has been my experience as well, and the research backs that up, right? Where it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that there are things that you can do. Everybody knows that. It's where to start, and that's where like Firewise and I can help, as well as the other coordinators in other counties. So a really great place to start is just at your home, the home itself. And starting from the roof and going down can be a good way to think about that. So looking at your roof, is it in good shape? Where might embers land? A fun thing you can do is maybe take some wood stove pellets, throw them at your roof, see where they're going to stick. That might be where embers are going to land.
Oh,
so,
interesting.
Yeah, so how are the shingles doing? Are your gutters clean? And then you can move down to look at the rest of your house. How's the siding looking? Do you have things up against the house that are flammable? You might think about moving those away during the summertime when we're getting really hot and dry. And then you just basically move out from there. And so we have the graphic of the Firewise
The map,
ignition zones. Yeah, and so this is basically what you're thinking about, right? So when I'm talking about starting at your home, we're talking about that immediate zone and then rippling out basically until we get to the entire community. So these are all over the place. You just Google Firewise. This is going to be one of the first things you see, or defensible space. That's another common term. And all that is creating that space around your house so that you are better prepared if and when an ember or something happens, power lines, whatever it may be. So that there's less fuel essentially, because it's all the same to a fire, right? It's just fuel. And so when you really get into it, you're only as safe as your neighbor's house. And so that's where we're getting that multiplying effect with Firewise. So you start with your own home, get it cleaned up. It's basically just, home and regular landscape maintenance like you would be doing. But then like you were saying, Brent, if you do live in the woods, there might be some other additional considerations, and that's where we can work with great partners like Oregon Department of Forestry to do some thinning projects like they've been doing up at Morgan Lake, our first Firewise community here in Union County. And then thinking about some other things additionally, preparedness, if and when something does happen, like Nick was saying, then we can get with Nick, have him take a look, have our rural fire protection districts take a look. Do we have good emergency evacuation routes around this community? Do the driveways have clearance? So you really just start with one small thing around your house, and then you start brainstorming and get the ball rolling from there.
Wow. So then how much space around the house, what's the first barrier? If I have shrubs around my house, how far should they be from the actual house itself?
So ideally 5 feet. And it can vary depending on what type of shrub that is, how thick it is. If you have things lean, clean, and green is one of the sayings, where it's not going to be as concerning as if you have just like a wall of juniper, right?
Right.
So it's all on a spectrum. We're not saying everybody needs to cut down all of their trees and just put gravel in there, but it's really just thinking about how am I reducing the fuel load that's right around there. But ideally about 5 feet, you don't want things up under the eaves of your house. If you have tall trees, maybe right next to your house, think about limbing them up higher so that if there is a ground fire, it doesn't spread up into that tree canopy.
Okay. And let's talk about a juniper, for instance, because they're very green, and I think they're green year round, but the fuel is really the dead older stuff that's underneath, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I would describe a juniper as if you could take a gas can full of gas and turn it into a tree.
That's it.
That would be a juniper.
It doesn't matter how green it is; it's going to burn like crazy.
All the oils in it. Really,
oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the heat release from it's especially like the landscaping varieties of juniper shrubs is just it's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and so let's say like my house, our house has it's kind of a plastic siding, okay, and so that plastic is going to melt, and if there's something flammable underneath, then the potential of that, and if the fire could get underneath that, then that's when it catches. Mm-hmm. Am I thinking that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that people often don't fully consider when they're thinking about their home and ignitions they think about direct flame impingement, like the fire moves through
Right,
the forest and
right.
it's going to come to my house. A lot of homes actually start on fire after the flame front passes. And that's because of the ember shower and where embers land. What Anna mentioned about like throwing the wood pellets on your roof, that's simulating all the firebrands and like burning bits of trees and other homes that are falling on your home and on your wood deck, on your wood pile, on the bark mulch that you have so neatly all the way around your house.
Right.
That is just there, a receptive bed for those embers to land in and start a fire. So if people think about that as well, and Anna, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's really great. There's multiple ways that fire can get you, right? There's multiple different ignition sources. Like I said, it could be a power line, it could be fireworks, it could be anything. So just thinking generally about reducing the fuel and thinking about, the different ignition sources is a good way to start.
So, and we all just witnessed what happened in California with those fires. And, somewhere on the news, I heard that part of that was that the embers actually came in through the vents and got into the,
Into attic space.
the attic space, right? Yeah. And so, so if you have, even if you've done everything right, but it gets in the wrong place, then, I don't know, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so with the vent spacing specifically, if you want to go down a YouTube rabbit hole, there's all sorts of great videos of researchers who get to light houses on fires and simulate fires for a living. And so there's a lot of research behind this. And so the recommendation is that you have 1/8 inch screening on any sort of opening that might be around your house, so vents around your decking, because what they found is that any ember that can get through a 1/8 inch hole doesn't have enough energy in it to start a fire.
Right.
So if you have a larger gap, right, then a bigger ember can get through that has more energy and that could potentially start a fire. So yeah, that's another great small thing that you can do. You can pick that screening up at ACE or D&B, and it's, just get it installed.
You got really excited when you started talking about fires. Like, do you do this for a job, or is there some sort of affinity? You know what I mean? Like, is there a love for fire? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I went back to school in part because of fire. I saw that, wildfires were affecting things out here in the West. Smoke is something that no one really likes, but something that's really exciting that's starting, and I think it is unique out here in the West and especially Northeast Oregon, is that fire can also be used as a tool, as one of the many tools in our toolbox to helping us decrease that fuel load. So prescribed fire is one of those tools and can be really helpful in certain areas. But I think there's a lot of people who get into this work because we want to protect our community, but it also is a really cool biological process.
Interesting. So going back to the screen that is over some of those vents, so the standard screen that comes like from, if you buy a vent and you put it in, most of the time that's a little coarser than 1/8 of an inch. Am I understanding that? Unless, they're probably manufacturing them with finer screen now, but the video I watched, one of the things they said is like, it's pretty simple to just replace that screen. It might not be simple for me, but it's a process that people can do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
So, all right. And then somewhere along the line, one of the videos I heard was like if you have a deck, having furniture that's not flammable. Talk about that. Why would that be important?
Well, again, it's just all fuel, right? And so if you have a wicker chair versus a metal chair,
Right.
Again, doesn't take a rocket scientist to think which one's going to be more flammable. Even removing your cushions can be helpful in some instances in the summer if you're not using them. You just never know when an ignition is going to start. And so thinking about those kind of things. So yeah, if you're thinking about upgrading your patio furniture, maybe switching to metal might be a good idea if you're really concerned.
Okay. So Nick, help me understand how does the Forest Service and some of the other agencies fit into this, and how is this different?
So everybody has a somewhat different responsibility based on land ownership and also what actions are being taken either before, during, or after fire events. So the Forest Service or BLM or Park Service are all federal land management agencies that respond to fires on the federal lands that they manage. And here in Northeast Oregon, we're really fortunate that we, is from our federal interagency dispatching standpoint, use nearest resources. So if there is a fire that maybe is on private land, but a Forest Service engine is what's closest to that, they'll send that Forest Service engine to that fire.
Okay.
And that's something that is not, it might seem pretty common sense. Oh, send whatever fire engine's closest, but that's not something that happens everywhere. And we're really fortunate that all of our local agencies cooperate and work together that well. And it's one of the reasons why we haven't had a lot of really big fires is our initial attack resources are amazing. And then so then Oregon Department of Forestry, they respond and are the primary protection agency for our private, primarily forest land, but they also protect rangeland. So if you think of the Forest Service being the national forest as far as agency having jurisdiction, they're doing everything as far as the fuels treatments and fire response. And then Oregon Department of Forestry, it's a little bit more nuanced because they don't have control of the land, so to speak. So they are in a situation where they can encourage landowners to take management actions and maybe help landowners get some funding, things like that. But then they're the suppression response resource on that. And then you take one step closer to the towns and communities from the private forest land, and then you typically will encounter rural fire protection districts. And in Union County, we have several. We have the LaGrange, Union, Imbler, Cove, Elgin, North Powder, Medical Springs, RFPDs. And so they will respond primarily with volunteers to fires. And then there's the municipal departments. In Union County, we only have one city-operated department, which would be the City of LaGrange Fire Department. So those are kind of on the fire response side of things. And then there's people like Anna through Firewise who will work directly with the landowners to try and motivate and organize. Often the organization is the biggest thing. After you have an event like the fires in California, motivation can be somewhat organic, or there's maybe a bad fire season like last summer. Maybe new people who had properties burned, houses burned, things like that. That's the motivation, but there's not the necessarily the organization component. So that's where Anna is really key at helping those people get together, get on the same page, and as a community take some actions together that then are oftentimes, as she mentioned with ODF, supported by some of the fire response agencies. Because there's a pretty obvious connection between being prepared for a fire and how well you're able to then respond to something.
Okay. So, thank you. That helps a bunch. Help me understand. So, what do you do when somebody who is elderly, which a lot of the places, that are kind of out in the woods are people that have been in the area for a long time, and they know that their space isn't very defensible, but they physically might not have the ability to do that. How do they manage that?
Yeah, and so that's where you call me, you call any of the other partners that Nick mentioned. They might direct you to me. I can come out. We can get somebody to come out, help walk around, talk about what you would like to do with your property, what your concerns are, what's keeping you up at night, and we can start from there. And depending on how big the project is, then that's where I'll go reach out to other partners. So we have the North Powder Fire Department got a grant from the Oregon State Fire Marshal They have a big skid steer and a masticator and some funding to go help people with defensible space work right now. We're hoping to, replicate that and build our capacity throughout the county to do more of that work. There's also a few youth crews we can tap into. If it's a bigger project, there's contractors. We can work with Oregon Department of Forestry to help connect you with a contractor. Part of my job is also looking for grants to help support this work so that it's not all on someone who, especially if they're older and on a fixed income and can't do it themselves.
Right.
We are helping bring in funding to support that. So that is also part of my job. But yeah, just starting with the conversation and figuring out the work is going to be the first step, and then we'll figure out and try to help you however we can. We might have to get creative, but maybe there's some neighbors. That is what Firewise comes back to, is neighbors helping neighbors. Maybe your neighbor already has, a big great orchard ladder and all the chainsaws you could ever want. And,
Right.
We can really get some work done just putting together a community work day. It doesn't have to be a big production or anything, but if you have a good potluck, you can bring people together really quickly. And so for Firewise, for the official recognition, all you need is 8 neighbors to get together and decide that they want to do it. And so if you have a potluck, get them all together and decide what can we do around our neighborhood.
Yeah. Okay. So real quick, just like if we were walking around a house, visually kind of take us around the house and what it is that you might encounter and what it is that you might point out and look at.
Well, it's going to be different for every house.
Right.
It depends on what you have the house. But like I said, starting at the roof and going down. So just generally, what is the general home condition? We'd all like to be able to do big major upgrades, but there are small things that you can do. Things like we've already mentioned, like cleaning out the gutters, looking at your vents, moving things away from your house, doing that general continued landscape and maintenance. I want to mention OSU Extension has a great Firewise landscaping guidebook full of Firewise plants you might want to put around your house if you're looking to do some new landscaping projects.
And they're not junipers, probably.
They're not junipers, no. They are not. No, so there's tons of resources out there. But yeah, again, just starting from the roof and moving outwards, like looking at the mulch, like Nick was saying. Do you have bark mulch? Maybe we can think about upgrading that to some gravel over time. How are the trees around your house? Are they touching the ground or are they limbed up? And these are things that, you're going to be able to do them maybe at different times of year. Like right now, you might be able to do some pruning, but maybe you don't want to do that in the middle of summer. The gutters, that's going to be a continuous thing. So it's this continual maintenance process. And that's where the Firewise program is really great, because it helps you as a community develop a whole 3-year action plan. So it's not just one and done, right? Like plants grow back, new people move in. So you're always having to continue this conversation with your neighbors about what are we doing to help each other, help our community, make Nick's job easier, hopefully, and all of our emergency response personnel to take care of ourselves.
So, for instance, then, and again, part of this from experience, part of it from watching the video. So like if you have a whole bunch of pine cones that are on your roof, then in the spring, and especially if your roof is such to where it creates a valley and where debris just kind of falls and stays naturally.
Yeah, because that's where the ember's going to
Right.
go. Probably
Yeah.
it's going to hit the roof and fall right down in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pine cones and pine needles landed there for a reason.
Yeah,
and
right.
they probably will as well.
Right.
Yep.
And so how do you even defend a shake roof? I mean, how is that even defensible? Nick, why don't you take that one?
When there's a fire and fire departments are doing what we call structural triage, driving through neighborhoods,
Right.
identifying, do people have enough space at their driveway for us to bring in a fire truck, turn it around, and be able to have it pointed out so we can try to defend the structure and leave? Or is there not enough space? Is there fuel right up against the house? If we get to a house that has a cedar shake roof and juniper bushes all grown around the windows, all the way around the house, and it looks more like a hobbit cave than it does a
You may
house,
as well just tell them
then
to get out.
in that case, that's
Evacuate.
probably like we either would commit so many resources to trying to protect that at the cost of maybe many other houses burning, or maybe we have to make the choice to not defend that house in order to be able to defend 10 others.
Yeah.
So things like a shake roof are a really big factor in determining whether or not a home is defensible. Because if there's something like maybe a one juniper tree or something, like, to stay on the juniper theme, that's close to a house, we can cut that down, throw it as far away from the house as we can downwind, and then maybe move on to the next house, and then that might be fine. That's an action that we could do fairly quickly. But we can't re-roof a house when there's a fire coming. So definitely, if someone had a cedar shake roof, I would really encourage them to prioritize that, and especially if they are in any type of a wildland or more rural environment. But even in town, the ember shower from a wildfire can really be far-reaching. And there's homes that, while oftentimes a home may start on fire after the fire front passes, it's also possible for a home with a really receptive fuel bed around it or on it to start on fire well in advance. And especially when there's a lot of wind, you could see homes a mile in front of the fire. None of the vegetation's on fire, but a house catches on fire because it has a cedar shake roof.
Yeah. Interesting. And we saw some of that a lot of that in California.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it's that is kind of funny, interesting, because there are pictures I've seen where the vegetation seems to be still green, but all of the houses are burnt up.
Yeah. And like
yeah.
Anna mentioned, a house, unless it's built out of brick and rock, it's a fuel type. It's wood.
Yeah.
Primarily. So, and from the fire's perspective, which is just basically an out of control chemical reaction, it really doesn't care what it encounters.
Huh. Wow. All right. Well, cool. Hot. Yeah. Yeah. No. Well, anything else before we kind of wrap up that you can think of that we haven't covered?
One thing, and I guess if you have anything, jump in, but maybe if you could describe, I know there's a lot of issues that people are really concerned about insurance right now.
Yeah.
And insurance companies are out and doing audits on defensible space and the risk of properties. And I know there's a lot of insurance companies, I've heard of people in Union County who have had private contractors working for insurance companies coming to their homes and assessing to see if it's within the risk envelope of what that company is comfortable with. Anna, can you maybe elaborate on what benefits people might see from being part of something like Firewise when it comes to insurance and that type of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So here I know in Northeast Oregon, talking with my counterparts in Wallowa and Baker and Grant County, they have specific examples of people who their rates haven't necessarily gone down. Unfortunately, we would all like that. I really wish I could control the insurance market, but I don't. But they have been successful in writing to insurance companies and helping folks not get dropped because they are Firewise, because they've been able to show we are part of this community. We've decreased our collective risk as well as our individual risks. They've been successful in keeping their insurance because of that. Because the insurance company is looking at the cost, right? And so Firewise really got going in Northeast Oregon in Grant County. There was just this past year, 2 of the Firewise communities burned down there, but all of their homes were okay. And so the insurance company is looking at that and going, oh, we don't have to pay as much to these folks now.
Right.
So that really is the benefit of Firewise communities. So it's helpful in that way. Something that I'm hopeful will become more common as well is in California, actually. The California state legislature passed some legislation that requires insurance companies to consider homes that are in a Firewise community and to work out giving them some sort of discount. So that is currently in the works right now. So hopefully that will continue to be the trend, that there are benefits monetarily to becoming Firewise as well. And if you want more resources, just to wrap up, we have our Northeast Oregon Firewise.org website. You can find your coordinator, whatever county you're in. And then I also have a Firewise webpage on our Union Soil and Water Conservation District webpage.
Already posted in the comments.
Awesome. Thank you.
How do they get a hold of you? Like if somebody wants to talk to you about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm in the same office building as the OSU Extension out by Island City. If you want to drop by, I can also share my email address. Yeah. It's alinnquist@unionswcd.org. Yeah, happy to help anybody.
Lindquist at Union swcd.org.
Yep. And so we're hoping, give me a call. I'll try to help you out however I can, hoping to build capacity with myself and other great partners to come out and have more folks available to do just what we were talking about today. Come out, walk around your home, do a home ignition zone assessment, and then if you are in the woods, do a further landscape assessment and get you really great recommendations on where to start and help you start chipping away at that.
Good. Yeah, and the insurance conversation is a whole nother conversation. Yeah, and recently Commissioner Anders was on and talked about how the state of Oregon has kind of classified properties and kind of made that worse, and how they're trying to, but you know, I had some personal, we have a 100-year-old cabin that we inherited that's up at the Wallowa Lake area. You know, it's 800 square feet, you know, but the insurance company, for us to insurance that, they're putting a value just of the building up $450,000. And, wow. And, you know, when I checked into that, it was, the bottom line is that the insurance companies are pretty much in the driver's seat, and they're not, you know, for me to, they're not taking on new customers. And so there was no opportunity to do anything differently. But anyhow, it's, and part of that is because of the fires that have been so well publicized in California or wherever the case might be. Everybody is trying to figure out how to, I mean, at the end of the day, the insurance companies are they try and take in more money than what they spend. And if they don't, then it's not a good business model.
Right, yeah. They're a business as well. Did you happen to reach out to the Division of Financial Regulation for any assistance?
No, what is that?
So they are the state advocacy group for the state of Oregon. A lot of them are former insurance agents themselves. They are the ones who are overseeing the insurance agencies in the state, and they will be able to tell you if your insurance company is trying to do any funny business.
Yeah.
So they are a free resource. You can reach out to them, and they have outreach and engagement people who are very lovely and who will help you if you need any assistance or have any questions and just want to get a second opinion about your insurance.
Yeah.
They're absolutely outstanding state agency. That I've worked with them a fair bit and have nothing but really positive things to say.
Yeah.
So I would recommend definitely, if anybody has questions or if they feel that they're, from an insurance standpoint, that they're maybe not, a claim isn't being honored to what they think their policy says or anything like that, reaching out to Oregon Department of Financial Regulation, and they're really incredible group of people.
Yeah. Well, good. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be, and as I've gone through this process, it's been like, you know, I mean, just the nature of insurance is there's an underwriter somewhere that you never talk to. They're kind of like the wizard behind the curtain. And so then a customer's ability to actually get information is, you know, or to talk with somebody who is actually making the decision is awful. Mm-hmm. It's not, you know, I mean, it's, in those situations, I mean, it's the same way if you're getting a loan from a bank or whatever, you know, there's kind of like this insulation piece between the customer and the lender and so on and so forth. But no, that's really good information. So, all right. Well, thank you, Anna, for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. And Nick, always a pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you for continuing to invite me back despite me being here.
Yeah. Next time, bring some toys. Maybe I want to see that drone,
Yeah.
the new drone that
Yeah.
you got. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you and I have a lot in common, and well, from a technical standpoint, a lot of similar interests. And so, yeah, that'd be great.
And we got to get me hooked up with a day out. You know, now that the weather's getting nice, I won't do it in the winter. You know, I'm not a winter dude, but I want to go out there and hang out with them and take some pictures, and you know, on a training day or something. That would be.
That
awesome.
sounds great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be good.
Yep. Yeah. Any time that we can help with search and rescue or bring attention to the good things that you're doing, and you also, Anna, you know, I mean, you kind of heard our rant earlier. You know, I mean, if you have pictures ever that you want to send us, it's like, hey, this was a cool day. You can throw that
Ship
up.
'em.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We'd love to have it.
Absolutely.
So,